What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Stories with Mr. Ahamad. Thank you so much for joining me here in my home. It is always a pleasure to have you here listening to me talk about books. Now, continuing our thread of what we're doing this season with covering Black stories, I would like to introduce to you a book by my favorite author, and that's Sunny. This is the third book in the Track series, and let me tell you, I wish I had these stories when I was younger. Ghost, Patina, Sunny, Lou, which I'll get to in my next season. I just really love these characters. You know, I love everything about them. I love how they speak. I love, their families. I love where they live. I love the situations that they find themselves in. It feels very at home and very real. And a lot of the things that I read in these books, specifically the Track series, always reminds me about, things that I grew up doing or the people that I knew. And Jason Reynolds really has a knack for that.
And so my job is when I'm writing these characters and when I'm adding the secondary and tertiary characters to sort of figure out how to fortify the protagonist, it's all about making sure that every single character is 100%. Every single character is a whole person, which means every single character has to have struggle and every single character has to laugh, right? Every character has to cry and they have to laugh. All of them. They all have to have trouble and they all have to have triumph. I've never met a teenager who's had a hard life that was so hard that he or she did not laugh. Ever. I've never known a young person who didn't find humor in hardship. Ever. Right? And there's so much to learn from that. And I think sometimes we're like, man, it's either young people, all they want to do is laugh and not pay attention to anything important, or young people, all they are is doomed. And it's a strange thing when the reality is that almost everybody I've ever met is somewhere in that sweet spot where it's like, man, I'm not sure if, I've got my issues and life is tough and there's family stuff and there's my mom yelling at me about social media and the dangers of it, and school is hard and I'm being bullied in school and I got this going on and that going on. And then that same kid is like, but when I get around my friends, all we do is laugh and we joke and we read Harry Potter, or we go to the basketball court, or we do each other's hair, or we tease our little brothers, and all this other, that part of your life is just as important. And so I think about all of that for every single character that seems like they don't matter, but the truth is that it's in their wholeness that the protagonist becomes more whole.
And I just love that about his writing, because it makes me feel like I'm spending time with someone as opposed to, just reading words on the page. And something else that Reynolds does so well is that he does not hesitate to just get into the story and give you things that are interesting.
That's what we're really hoping that Jason can extend.
When did you make your first connection to reading? I mean, what was it? Do you remember?
To reading?
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
What was it that lit you up?
17 and a half years old, Richard Wright's Black Boy.
Yeah.
And what lit me up about it was that it wasn't a 50-page exposition. Page 2, we were right in the midst of the drama.
Yeah.
Page 2, right? I think it's interesting that we expect young people to want to read 50 pages of exposition when they live in 2-minute worlds where things are happening rapidly.
Yeah.
So my job as a writer is to write something that has a hook in the beginning. By the way, adults also don't like to read 50-page exposition.
No, they don't.
Right?
No.
And
Yes,
so for me,
that's true.
it was the hook. And once I got to the hook and I got through a book, then it became the obsession with completion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then my ball started to roll.
Yeah.
These are just some of the reasons why Jason Reynolds is my favorite author, but I could talk about that all day. In the meantime, we're just gonna focus on Sunny. This book was hilarious. Unlike the other books, Ghost and Patina and Lou, because I read that already too, this one is written as a journal, which is fitting because Sunny is actually homeschooled, which I found weird, but it explains it in the story. The thing about it being weird though is great because this whole book is weird. Sunny himself is a weirdo and I love it. The way that he talks about his relationships, the way that he talks about his desires, the way that he talks about his pain and how he tries to give meaning to everything. And he does so with nonsense words. Throughout the whole book, this is just Jason Reynolds being in this character's voice and playing with the sounds and the meanings of words and how they go together. And there's this other thing where he talks about like dancing, and how it's similar to some of the things that he has to do in track. And he describes it with these booms and ticks, and he's writing everything out. And it's just funny because reading it felt like I was reading instructions for like a TikTok dance or something. So that was really enjoyable. At the heart of the story, this is about Sonny coming to terms with his own desires and his own interests in spite of what people want for him. And along with that, it's also about him longing for a relationship that he didn't have. Early on, it's not much of a spoiler because it happened so early in the book, but early on we find out that Sonny lost his mom, when he was born, and he never knew her, and it creates this rift between him and his dad. And what I love so much about this is that we always get stories about characters and their dads. It's always like, well, my dad was this kind of person and I need to live up to that name and legacy, or my dad wanted this for me, or my dad never did this. All these daddy issues, we're talking about Batman, we're talking about like Lara Croft, we're talking about Spider-Man with Uncle Ben, whatever. Give me some mom stories, right? Tell me about moms and the love and about that space that they feel of making you feel comfortable and making you feel loved and warm and protected. Like, those are stories that we need too. So shout out to the moms, and shout out to Jason Reynolds for putting that in this book, because that was really important. Outside of that, as usual, Jason Reynolds has done an excellent job writing about track. So we hear about how to take strides and the breathing, and they do the exercises and the stretching, but there's a new thing in this. So Ghost was about sprinting, Bettina was about the relay, and Sonny is about discus throwing. Now, I've heard of discus, and I've seen it in passing. I've seen it in my first exposure to it was like Animalympics, where you have all these cartoon animals doing the Olympics and stuff. That was really fun, but I didn't really understand discus. And when they were talking about it in the book, I was like, is it that hard? Like, what the heck is this? And then I watched some Olympic footage, and yes, it looks difficult. So that was super cool to have that in there. And what it made me realize, the reason why I love this series so much is because, it takes plot and story and it, does different things with them. But the key thing is that, for these characters, track is something that they do, but it's not the absolute of who they are. And that's really important, because we have to remind our kids and remind ourselves that we are more than our work. We are more than our hobbies. We are worth something just by being us, and we have something to offer. And that is explored in depth in this book. And I love that, at the start, Sonny is questioning, and at the end, despite how things go, he was so in love with everything about himself, and his relationships were better for it because he went through that journey of coming to understand that there was value in himself and what he wanted to do. All right, now here's some good stuff. How would you actually teach Sonny, right? So I talked about all these nonsense words. I think the best thing that you can do, if we're talking nonsense words, then you can either pair this up with some Dr. Seuss, or you could jump right into Alice in Wonderland.
Your world? What nonsense. Now, nonsense. Once more, from the beginning.
That's it, Dinah. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense. Nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrariwise, what it is, it wouldn't be. And what it wouldn't be, it would. You see? Ow. In my world, you wouldn't say, meow. You'd say, yes, Miss Alice. Ow.
The way that Alice is talking about her own world is exactly how Sonny talks. That's what I was thinking about the whole time. And you can look at this wordplay, how words have different meanings and different sounds and they connect. That happens throughout all of Alice in Wonderland. So you can study that and read this. It would make for a nice movie day in class. Outside of that, I think a really good film that you can use to pair this with in terms of themes of, you know, coming into your own despite what other people have determined for you is Netflix Uncorked. That movie is so good, and you know, it's about putting yourself in spaces that you deserve to be in, where you want to be, chasing your dreams, things of that nature, and a lot of that resonates here with Sonny.
What happened to you yesterday afternoon?
Just got my schedules mixed up.
I thought you said you weren't gonna let this wine thing mess with your work.
Okay, so
I want to become a master sommelier.
Trying to be an African? Is that like a pirate?
No, that's a sommelier.
Kelly Kendrick dated a Somalian. He stole her identity. Well, is she okay? I don't know. I don't be up in people's business like that.
Then why did you bring it up? That don't make no sense.
My whole life, I've been told what my future was gonna look like.
If he don't take over the stand, who gonna carry it on when I'm gone?
You gotta give him a chance to figure it out.
But I just want to find my own thing.
Here's where things get a bit complicated. So Sonny is a middle grade book, and it has a lower Lexile level. Uncorked is obviously, you know, a drama and is more adult oriented, not that there's like sex and drugs and stuff in it. But putting those together, depending on what grade level you're teaching, I believe that, you know, this book, not just this book, but the entire track series could be taught across, you know, middle school through high school. And my reasoning for that is that these books are written so well in terms of capturing, you know, people and their personalities, and how it is that they engage with other people and how they come to solve their issues. Like that whole idea about a hero's journey, the way that it's packaged, you know, there's so little exposition, it's heavy on dialogue, it's heavy on action. These are things that will really gravitate towards students, and I just don't feel that we should be eating all their time away with books that are, quite frankly, boring to me anyway, you know, and to each his own. But if you have a group of students, right, and if you have some reluctant or high taste readers, it's important to put things in front of them that's going to resonate with them. And if you give them something that's specifically talking about making your own way, doing things that are different than what's predetermined for you, and really just finding your own, then, you know, regardless of the age, why not this book? You know, why not pair it with that? Because it works, and if it works, then it should be done. Lastly, there's this part of the book where Sonny and his homeschooling teacher go out to see this film Baraka.
Baraka.
As you can see, Baraka is about motion, it's about movement, there's no dialogue, it's very energetic and very kinetic. And that ties very closely to how Reynolds writes this book and this whole track series with how the kids move and how they compete. So bringing that together and asking your students, like, why is this significant? And, you know, having them relate the movement and the motion in the film to their own lives or the things that they experience could be a way to help them understand, you know, how the words are used here and how the creativity led to expressing that, and how they can play with words themselves in their writing and, you know, their self-expression in order to fulfill those same things. With all that being said, the last thing that I have to say about this is that if you've seen my Instagram page, then you know that I am concerned and interested in not just talking about stories about race when we deal with representation, but also talking about stories that show life and that have joy and that have other interests involved. Because, you know, our younger people, our students, they deserve to see those things. That is the thing that we're missing when we talk about books. We should also be able to tie reading and tie literature and literacy to joy and to fun. And this book does it. It does it so well. So I suggest that you give it a read, the whole series.